Hey everyone, what's going on? Welcome to an episode of Am I Missing Something? It's Matt.
And it's Zach.
This is our show where, well, we try to figure out if there's a topic that we're missing something on. And you click the picture, and to say that to me that this is a bit of an enigma is... I don't think it does it justice, because you figure a band like Phish, while everybody, I think, nowadays knows the name, if you ask people just generally to name a song, you couldn't.
No. Unless if you're a diehard Phish fan. And even then, a lot of diehard fans, if they can name a fan, there's always a but to follow it. There's always a, well, you gotta listen to this version, or it's about the live show, or this song's good, but it's not a true representation of the band. Like, really, I think the word enigma is a great way to describe it. Phish is a band that is so massive, has such a huge diehard following that most bands would kill to have. They could play stadiums. Whenever they come to a town, it's almost as if it's a festival rolling through that town. It boosts the economy for a town instantly.
And what's funny is I don't associate them with Madison Square Garden at all.
But if you ask certain fans, and in fact, a lot of their fans only, like when it comes to Christmas time in New York, to them, it means Phish at Madison Square Garden playing New Year's Eve shows.
And they have like a banner in the rafters at the Garden. Yeah. I would think like number one to see an artist there, Billy Joel.
Absolutely, Billy Joel, number one. But Phish have sold out more shows at Madison Square Garden than most bands.
Right, and that's crazy to me.
And yet they are not... I mean, forget commercial radio. They're not a band with hits.
Period.
Yeah. You could even argue it's a Grateful Dead kind of scenario, but even that, I feel like, doesn't do it justice as to what is it about the band's fandom. You can make the joke that they have their own economy in a way. Like, how did they get to be so big?
Well, I think, first and foremost, you brought up the point about their music. So... to think about them and to think about another, like the Grateful Dead, I think you have to really think about it from a perspective of these are two bands that blend genres of music very well. Going back to the Grateful Dead, because that's really where the jam band started. So talking about the Grateful Dead, I think everything musically back in the 60s was so pigeonholed into this is a hit, this is pop, this is rock, that's bad, this is good. You know, there's just a clear dividing line and clear sections that you could call out. And then the Grateful Dead comes along and just blends everything together into, honestly, what I don't even want to classify Phish and the Grateful Dead as jam bands anymore. I want to classify them as feel-good music, because they do have messages in their music, but the way that the music's presented and the way that the feeling comes through in the music, all it's trying to do is make you feel good. That's really all I think it is. I don't think it's anything really more than that. Like on a song, I know I'm going to screw this up, but You Enjoy Myself. There we go. I got it.
Yeah, mazel tov.
It really just comes across as guys who are technically proficient having a good time. Hell, the video that I watched of You Enjoy Myself, dudes were jumping around on trampolines. Trey, the singer, guitar player, and Mike, the bass player, just jumping around on like those little exercise trampolines in the middle of the set during the keyboard solo. And then Trey puts his guitar down and just starts dancing during the bass solo. It's like, okay, well, they're just having a good old time. And I honestly think that's what their music is all about. And I think that resonates with a lot of different people.
Well, you mentioned about the Grateful Dead connection. I always found it also kind of funny in that if you asked a Deadhead and you asked a Phish head, they would come out arguing going, no, there's no similar, like it's so polarizing. But I mean, forget even genre styles or like inspiration. You can't deny that Phish filled a void for a lot of Deadheads too. In that,
and I'm glad you're bringing this up.
Yeah, because some fans will admit that, as morbid as it sounds, in 1995 when Jerry died, at the time Phish was already starting to build their own fan base. They were definitely getting, making the rounds, and they kind of helped fill the void in that they were also very similar in that, like, listen, our sets are going to be different every night. Even the songs that we do play at the same night, they're going to be some different intricacies.
Right.
And also, hey, fan first. You want to come record our show? Come record our show. Like, it's very, like, they were there at the right time in a sense, in that a lot of jam band fans who needed the next band to travel around and go on the road with, Phish filled that void in a way. But I get why Phish fans and Deadheads don't like being compared to each other, because I would argue that Phish, kind of to your point, is a little bit more fun. They're a little bit proggier. They're a little bit jazzier.
Yep.
And while the Grateful Dead always had a sense of coolness to them, Phish wore their nerd flag proudly and were like, no, we're nerds. I mean, they come from the Frank Zappa mind frame much more so than Grateful Dead, in that they're willing to be a little bit more silly, or not ironically silly either. Like, no, we're nerds. We're going to sing a barbershop quartet song in the middle of nowhere just because it makes us chuckle. And we know it's kind of silly that we're 4 white guys from Vermont doing a funk song. Just roll with it. I think that's kind of the separation from them.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought this up, because I found a video when I was doing some research about this, and it's very interesting, the comment that was left on the video. And I think it illustrates everything perfectly. So I got to give a shout out to this guy, Seth. I found his comment and I copied it. I'm going to read it. It's much lengthier than what I'm going to read, but if you want to go check it out, this is actually on the video of the performance that Phish did of Terrapin Station 3 years to the day after Jerry Garcia's death.
Side note, only a band like Phish could you go down this deep of a rabbit hole in regards to sourcing a comment on a random video and fans be like, no, I know what you're talking about. Great. Like, literally, that's the fandom of Phish.
Oh, yeah.
In a nutshell.
Right. So this is actually very, very interesting. And I'll talk about a little bit more about the Terrapin Station performance after this. But the comment goes, there is a reason why so many people say they get goosebumps listening to this, which is the Terrapin Station cover. Here's why. During the early 90s, so many new people, quote, got on the bus and saw their first Dead show. There were future Deadheads born between 69 and 80. Their first shows were most likely in 1990 or afterwards. This guy, Seth, his was in March of 93. The exact date is also on here. Hundreds of thousands of teenagers and college-age kids were getting into the Dead, where it be through trading and acquiring tapes of live shows or actually going to a show. Mail order tickets for the 95 fall tour had already been sent out. Then Jerry Garcia died on August 9th of 95. A month later, this guy Seth heard a band called Phish for the first time. People said that they were kind of like the Dead, or at least the closest thing to it. So I tracked down some cassettes of their live shows and bought the latest released Hoist. Number 1, Phish sounds nothing, in all caps, like the Grateful Dead to me. 2, I absolutely hated it. He was expecting songs with lyrical integrity and the mysticism of a song like Ripple or China Doll, but instead he got songs that were silly, pointless, corny, and didn't resonate with him at all. Trey didn't sound like Jerry. And the music itself, much more rigid, orchestrated, and embarrassingly lame. It baffled me as to why so many people compared this band Phish to the Grateful Dead. Then, in October of 95, I bought Phish's new live album that had just been released, a live one. That changed things. It was okay enough, and I find this funny, it was okay enough to convince me to buy tickets for 2 shows out of the 3. So it's okay enough to buy tickets for 2 shows.
What does that say about people just willing to go to live shows? What does it say about ticket concert prices in 1995?
Right?
Like, they're okay. Fine, give me 2 tickets.
So this was in Atlanta at the Fox Theater. November 10th of 95 and the 11th were his first Phish shows. Those shows changed everything in regards to how I viewed Phish and my respect for their music. And I was not only the one catching on. All those other thousands of 17 to 26-year-olds who were searching to fill void after the Dead had called it quits. They also became a touring part of the Phish scene. So I'm going to cut it off there, but it goes to show you just how much people disliked the other side, that you could listen to it and come across it as hokey. It's not the Grateful Dead. Yeah, it's not the Grateful Dead. And I can see why people liked the Grateful Dead, especially on a song like China Doll. I don't think anybody is expecting Phish to sound like that. That is only something the Grateful Dead can do. But if you're looking for that feel-good jam bandy type of vibe, yeah. If you're going into it, looking at it from that side, absolutely you're going to find it, because there's only so much a band can do for you. And I think that people trying to fill the void of Jerry Garcia's death with somebody else at that time, just because the band called it quits and there wasn't like Dead Company or, anything else like it at the time. I think Phish being Phish, I think it shouldn't have disappointed anybody, because they were being them and doing them, and they were doing the jam band thing because it was, cool to them. So they did it. But I don't think that they ever strived to try to be the Grateful Dead.
And, it kind of ties into his comment about how if you ask a Phish head why they like Phish, the first reaction will be, well, it's all about the live show. They'll even admit that it's not about the albums. It's about the live show. And normally I would say, well, that seems like a lame excuse. But having seen Phish live, I understand.
Well, I completely agree that it's not about the albums. The albums really are just like a diagram as to what you're going to hear. This music, it's so on the spot, and they're so good at what they do that it comes across as, this could have been on an album. But I can also say that I looked through all the albums and I looked at the streams for Phish. Mm-hmm. And very, very few songs have over 1 million listens.
Going back to the live show part, I feel like that's usually a cop-out for most bands. Like, you have to go see them live. In this case, I get it. I've only seen Phish live technically once, or during one music festival. They played 2 nights. It was Bonnaroo 2009. Went just going because I wanted to go to see Bonnaroo. Bruce was playing, a lot of other cool bands. I was like, sure, Phish, whatever, jam band, right? And I was blown away, because not only it wasn't the typical jam band I was expecting, it was definitely a lot more proggy than I was expecting, but the light show was incredible.
Yeah.
If we were to if you have to pick 3 bands that best represented Bonnaroo, Phish would be number 1, because, they even kind of inspired what Bonnaroo was initially. It was a jam band festival. Like, they really helped organizers shape what they wanted the festival to be like. But the people around the Phish show, different types of fans, it was just a fun environment to be in. I was 100% sober. Shocking, I know. A few people were like, "Oh, if you like Phish, then you're obviously doing drugs." I was 100% sober, and I still felt like it was a fun environment and experience to be in. It goes to the point of just feel good. It's happy. People are just enjoying the vibes. It's a getaway. That little 2.5, 3 hour set, it's a whole new universe that you're entering in, which is why I actually would love to see them at Madison Square Garden or their own show in an arena. There's very few bands that you feel like you are entering into their universe.
Yeah.
So I got that even at a festival where they're the headliner and it wasn't just them. Like, it was a lot of fun. And I don't even know why I haven't seen Phish since. And it kind of goes into, because we talked about Phish were there at the right time to capture new fans from Deadheads before. One article that I read from Vulture, their writer did a great job at kind of breaking down as to what type of fans they have. And this, I think, kind of explains why here we are in 2022 and Phish is still selling out Madison Square Garden. And the only reason why they didn't play New Year's Eve there is because the spread of COVID, they decided it was not worth risking it. But it was still sold out. And I apologize if I'm getting the time frames wrong, but pretty much between like 2000, 2001, they went on their first hiatus. Then they came back, and then between 2003 and 2009, they kind of disbanded. So kind of in a similar way, you had the diehard Phish fans who, keep in mind also, they engaged with their fans even more during the performance, where they even had like beach balls going around the audience, and every time someone would hit it, that's when they would play the note. So like the fans were part of the jam itself too, which is really unique and cool. Mm-hmm. So you had the OG fans who actually felt like they were part of the band in the very beginning. Then you had a wave of fans who discovered them in college, because I think that's another fair thing to say, is that this is a band that you definitely discovered in college. And then when you discover them, like, oh, you missed out on seeing them. So then when they came back, it was oh crap, I finally get to see them. So there was a wave of people who finally got to see them again at that point. But then what I also found really interesting is that there was a third wave, and the what the author calls like newbies, essentially. You look at these fans, and they're the kind of kids that you would see at raves or going to EDM shows, not necessarily jam bands. Mm-hmm. And they joke that like, oh, these kids, they're not really here for the music. They're here for the party environment. But I think that still speaks volumes to how Phish is able to reach a younger audience who are more tech savvy, who are maybe trading music online as opposed to via tapes like, fans did in the old days. And that's just the kind of environment that like a kid who's into rave music can appreciate a Phish show because of the lights, because of the environment. And that's without Phish changing their music either. That's not them going, oh, I'm changing it to appeal to these kids who are into ravers. They're just doing what they want to do. And it just so happens that these kids are like, sure, I'm down to party anyways.
Yeah, and I think that goes to speaking about their musical roots. Their musical roots really are like all over the board. Like you can hear, they're into the psychedelic rock and the prog rock. In a song like Farmhouse, you can hear it definitely has like folk, almost bluegrassy influences. And they're just all over the board. And that's kind of one of the things that I wanted to really point out here as to why I think some people, because we talked about the good parts so far, why I think some people don't necessarily like Phish, because I went into listening to this and I really could have cared less about Phish and their music before we did this, to be completely honest, because I'm not into the jam band thing. I mean, the most I ever dabbled into the Grateful Dead really was like Casey Jones or A Touch of Grey, and that was really it.
Yeah.
I listened to a lot of Grateful Dead and a lot of Phish while, we were preparing for this. And
this was definitely a topic that had always interested me, and I kind of forced Matt to do it.
Yeah.
Full disclosure.
So I can see why people don't like it, because I went into the album Lawn Boy and I was looking online. I was trying to figure out, all right, what should I listen to? First off, we already talked about it. It's not about the albums. It's not about the albums. It's because
it's almost like it's an added bonus if you find an album that you like.
Right. So, I mean, just to give you an idea, the streams on the album. So, track 1 of Squirming Coil is at 300,000. Reba, track 2, 400,000. My Sweet One, 275,000 ish. Split Open and Melt is 250,000 ish. So they're not really big listening, on an album. So I just went in, I wanted to hear what they were all about. And I listened to it and I'm like, okay, what am I listening to? Because it sounded like just like a complete disjointment of anything that I could have imagined. Like I was expecting kind of like a Grateful Dead vibe, and I didn't get that at all. I got like almost like a comedy band, but not being a comedy band, if that makes sense.
I think that's where the Frank Zappa elements come in. I mean, there's like a lot of songs where it's just like, you can even argue it's crude humor. It's just like you're kind of catering to young, right? It's the same people who probably thought Family Guy was hysterical when they were in high school or college. Like not the same kind of humor, but that kind of mentality where it's like the older you get, you realize, oh, this hasn't aged well.
Right. Now, I also didn't go in expecting minimal lyrics, which is mind-blowing to me, because music is either lyrical or it's instrumental. This was, I feel obligated to throw in some lyrics, so I'm going to throw in some lyrics. So here's what I listened to. I listened to a song called Slave to the Traffic Light. 11 minutes long. Here are all the lyrics in that song. Slave to the traffic light. Slave. See the city, see the zoo. Traffic light won't let me through. And that's it. Those are all the lyrics for the entire 12-minute video.
I mean, does more need to be said about a traffic light? You could argue that he captured all the emotions in those little lyrics. Yeah, you're right. It really should be either or, and it's the kind of annoyances that you would think would turn you off on, or it should turn you off on it, but yet I don't mind it. It doesn't.
It's interesting. It's definitely interesting, because I listened to Tweezer, which is a 35-minute video.
Depending on the version you watch.
I forget which one I watched, but
if you watch the studio version, I don't know. But
no, it was a live performance. It was 35 minutes, and I'm not going to read the lyrics, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4 lines of lyrics, and then just it's going to be cold, 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 cold. 4 times, another 4 lines, same thing. Look who's in the freezer, Uncle Ebenezer, and that's it. It's very, very minimalistic, and if you go into it expecting like a Casey Jones or Touch of Grey or Ripple or China Doll, there's you're not going to be fulfilled that way, and it's going to let you down. So there is definite differences between some of what the Grateful Dead did and some of what Phish did. Now, that's not saying that all Phish songs are like that, because they're not. And I'm sure somebody's screaming at the podcast device that they're listening on right now saying, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. There's so many songs that have so many more lyrics. Yeah, I'm sure that there are. But from my exposure and from what I saw going into this is what I found. And for a complete noob who has no idea of Phish musically, I can see how people can kind of get turned off to it, because you're waiting for that next bit of lyricism, and it just doesn't come.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely, if you're looking for straight to the point melodies and songs, of course this is not going to be for you. I guess for me, I kind of went into, going back to my first time seeing them at Bonnaroo live, I kind of went into it thinking, oh, it's just going to be a jam band. It's going to be all over the place and just be like long and dragged out. And I guess I was surprised from a musical standpoint. You mentioned the song Tweezer, which was the song that kind of made me go, oh, wow, okay, cool. In that, yeah, it was long, but at no point did I feel bored. I actually felt like, all right, this is a cool journey that I'm going on musically. Like, I actually feel the cool build up. I feel that maybe they're improvising here and there, but there's definitely like some thought out moments here, which is fun to see where it was going. Like I was actually really surprised and blown and taken away. It wasn't just four guys going, screw it, let's just noodle around here.
And that's honestly what I think I liked a little bit about this is, two factors. One is that it is semi-structured. And yeah, you do get, like I said, that diagram idea on albums, but you can definitely tell that people don't come every night because it's the same.
Yeah.
You're getting different moments, you're getting different improvs, you're getting, just a different performance and a different set list every time you come. And it's always different enough where you're like, what are they going to do next? Granted, you might see them play the same song twice, but it's not played the same way twice. I also think that if you go into it expecting to have a good time, you will have a good time.
Yeah, that's really the ultimate mantra there, is just have an open mind and have fun.
I also got a little bit more of a Southern vibe on this than I thought I was going to.
Yeah, for some reason I don't get. I actually was going to say that's where I felt like, to me, the Grateful Dead felt like a cooler, like a little bit more Southern country elements, where here was like, all right, these are guys from Vermont who are just kind of going to more jazzy, like there's definitely some bluegrass influences there, but to me it was more jazzy, like Nerds Up North.
There are, and I wish somebody said to me before going into this that, hey, if you're gonna listen to Phish, listen to what the hell is it called? You Enjoy Me. I wish somebody would have said, this is the song that you want to introduce yourself to Phish with, because that explains a lot of what you're going to hear. But for some reason, I don't remember what I was listening to, but I felt myself like I kept coming back to the Allman Brothers, and I kept coming back to Jessica. And I kept thinking to myself, well, why am I feeling like there's a lot of Southern in this? Obviously, the Grateful Dead, hands down, I get that. But I got that a little bit with Phish, and I was completely not expecting to get that, especially with a song like You Enjoy Me, or You Enjoy Myself. I knew I was going to screw it up once.
The angry trolls are coming for you.
I know, right? I just kind of got surprised that there was so much, I guess that there was so much Southern in this, because I don't necessarily associate this type of music with being like a Southern rock type sound, but I definitely got it, and I definitely was pleasantly surprised by it. Let's just say this, that the Allman Brothers comparison is not a bad thing in any way, shape, or form. It's just, it is what it is.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would claim it's bad.
Well, unless you just don't like the Allman Brothers.
Yeah. But I mean, it's clear. I would argue that there's definitely more diversity in regards to their influences versus Grateful Dead, and that's probably going to get me a lot of heat for saying that. Like, I really do think, and maybe that's also what's kind of enjoyable about Phish, is that you could, whether you're listening to a live recording, you're seeing them live, or you're hearing them on an album, you could get a completely different sound within the same 10 minutes of a song. It's kind of refreshing. And I think maybe there's even some enjoyment in that, like, this is a band that you're part of its community, even though in theory, mainstream hasn't accepted it. That's the only punk thing about it, in that it's the ethos of punk, not the song structure by any means, but there's definitely a DIY element that, for as big as they are, for as structured as a massive show, the light show might be, or the stage presentation might be, there is a all in this together vibe. Mm-hmm. And you get that sense when you're seeing them live.
Yeah.
Wherever you're seeing them live, is that you really do feel like you are part of something bigger yet small, if that makes any sense.
It does. And I think going back to the comment that I read earlier, the feel of, the Grateful Dead and Phish, kind of filling in that void, quote unquote. I think it's a huge nod to Phish that they weren't just a spin-off of the Grateful Dead, because if they
evolved it.
It's not only that they evolved it, they did it on their own merits.
Yeah.
With the way that they present themselves and the music that they play. But only in the 80s, like when they were starting out, did they play Grateful Dead covers. And what made it so special when they did that cover of Terrapin Station was they don't do that ever. And it's something not only different because that's what you want, it's also paying tribute to, I know who came before us. And I know that Jerry Garcia is a huge influence on this, this type of music and these types of fans. So when they did do that cover of Terrapin Station, a lot of people on the video actually made the comment that you could feel, because some of them were there for it, you could just feel the wave, come over the entire crowd when they played that, because it was just right place, right time, right band, right fans, that whole melding of what was right together. And it made for a very special moment. And it almost was like a passing of the torch type moment, because Phish, I don't think were around for 10 years at that point. Well, maybe
a little over.
A little over 10 years. Yeah, because this was done in 97, 98.
They were,
somewhere in there.
They were around for 10 years at that point.
Okay. So a little bit over 10 years at that point. So it was like, okay, they're established. They've got a couple of albums out, for whatever that means.
Yeah.
And they're just a different type of band that I think people were trying to, and this is, kind of funny that people try to pigeonhole them into the same box as the Grateful Dead, when I feel like all these bands are trying to do is just be so vastly different from everybody else and do their own thing, that to try to put these two together just because they're jam bands doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And it goes against the spirit of what both of the bands were. And to take it another step, I love, and I know we said this earlier, I love the nerdiness in this, because there's bands like, I'm going to just call out a whole bunch of different bands here, like Yes, King Crimson, Dream Theater, Between the Buried and Me. They're not bands who acknowledge the nerdiness, or that this is fun. It's technical. It's a job. This is what I'm doing. Granted, we like doing this, but it's meant to be taken a specific way.
Phish always acknowledged that they were just trying to have fun.
Exactly.
Dare I say, we captured it pretty well. Matt, do you have any other thoughts?
I mean, the only other thing is I want to applaud them for only licensing their name out to one company. And they did it the right way. They did it with Ben and Jerry. Obviously, if you don't know, Phish Food is their ice cream. And they've made royalties off of that stuff since 97. They donate a lot of the money too, so that's good.
They're definitely a commercial band, but they do it right.
Yes.
They do it right by their fans. And maybe that's part of it too, is that whatever they do, it's right by their fans.
Yes.
Or are we wrong? Are we still missing something? Are we way off in our thoughts on Phish and their large world of fandom? Let us know what you think on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, @Epic Footnote. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel to hear more podcasts like this, as well as some cool videos. And thank you, real quick, to our sponsors. First, Lucky 13 Beard Co. Amazing beard oils that just smell great, make your beards feel great. And if you use the code EFP10, you'll get 10% off of your orders, including a special beard oil that Matt and I collaborated with Ed from Lucky 13 on. the Lemmy. All the smells and scents that are inspired by Lemmy. It smells great. We guarantee it. Use that code EFB10 at lucky13beardco.com. Also, special shout out to Rootless Coffee out of Flint, Michigan. Some really interesting tasting coffees and blends. They actually work with a lot of other podcast artists, even some wrestlers on their own coffee blends. And if you use the code Epic Roast, you'll get 15% off of your order. Go to rootlesscoffee.com, code Epic Roast. Can't beat that. 15% off of coffee.
Delicious.
It's delicious. Thank you, Rootless Coffee, Lucky 13 Beard Co. Matt, thank you for humoring me with this fish conversation.
You enjoy myself.
And thanks so much for listening. Hope you listen to another episode real soon.